if brick and mortar retail as an entity were somehow able to communicate seamlessly with one another and had decided to shift the way they do business to better counter what was going on online, or even shift their business more efficiently to an online model, then there wouldn't have been the opportunity for these kind of upstarts, smaller companies or ones that are huge now like Amazon, to fill this void. But once the technology was out there, people started speaking with their dollars, and somebody chased those dollars.
Welcome to the Not Snowboarding Podcast, a delightfully tasteful glimpse into the other side of snowboarding.
That was Adam Gerken, Retail Marketing Manager at Mervin Manufacturing and past co-owner of the shop Snowboard Connection. And this is episode number 20 of the Not Snowboarding Podcast. I'm your host, Nate Mousson. In this episode, Adam and I discuss the changing landscape that brick-and-mortar retailers like Snowboard Connection, a shop that he was a partner in until its closing last year, have faced over the past decade, and how things like online shopping and Amazon have changed consumer behavior in not just the snowboarding world, but in retail as a whole. We also do a little brainstorming around the concept of the shop of the future. What's the model that's sustainable and profitable, but yet still allows space for the sense of community and history that today's core shops provide? It's fitting that this would be the episode that I announced that you can now support the podcast at no cost to you via Amazon.com. There are costs associated with podcasting: hosting fees, production costs, microphones, mixers, recorders, software, etc. And we're looking for a way to cover those costs, so I'm not coming out of pocket every month and not asking for handouts. Here's how it works. The podcast has joined Amazon's affiliate program. So in the show notes at thenotsnowboardingpodcast.com, each episode will have an Amazon banner ad at the very bottom of the post. Click that link before making a purchase on Amazon, and they'll kick some loose commission our way. There's also a link on the website called Support that can be bookmarked in your browser, making it very easy to find before you buy something on Amazon. I'm curious to hear what you think of this approach. Do you even shop on Amazon? Shoot me an email at nate@shredsouls.com with your thoughts. I was tempted to preface this conversation today with some kind of warning to help reduce the chance of somebody in the industry ending up butthurt over anything that we covered here. Adam and I spoke pretty freely about the challenges of the past 10 years as retailers, and some of those challenges, if taken out of context, could sound like we were speaking negatively about the industry. But I think the words from SnowCon's 2013 Transworld Retailer of the Year acceptance statement summarizes the love that both Adam and I share for snowboarding, the shops, the manufacturers, and all involved. Here are their words. The simple truth is that we all share this common sensation, this experience of slashing powder, or weaving through trees, or landing a jump, or watching the sunrise on your drive up to the hill, and just being so fucking grateful that you've got today and whatever nature has brought you this morning, and it's yours to share with your friends and the rest of this tribe. Let's jump into the conversation with Adam Gerken. I like your Skype picture, man. You got, looks like it might even be a helicopter shot, huh?
Oh, it might be.
Face all full of powder, big grin.
Yeah, that was probably the best day of snowboarding of my life, right there.
Is that
North Cascades heli?
How many drops did you do that day?
That day we did, I think it was either 5 or 6 that were, included. And then we paid for, I think, 3 more. We rode until we couldn't ride anymore. It was just, I'm not trying to brag. It was like the perfect day. It just all came together.
How much more did it cost for the extra ones?
I think that if I remember right, it's been a few years now. If I remember right, I think it was $75 a drop for the bird. So there were 4 of us. So, but maybe it was $75 a person. I don't remember.
Either way, when it's that good, I would go broke. If there was an ATM there, it'd be over. Well,
right. Because here we are, Nate, and I can't remember. So it obviously didn't matter.
No, you're exactly right.
I mean, if I was still like, oh, I can't believe I spent that extra money, then it wasn't worth it. But it was great. And I have to thank my friend Dan Sorcinelli, the local K2 rep, who made that trip possible. It was something else.
Well, that's still a bucket list item for me, is getting in a helicopter and doing some helicopter drops, man. I've still never done it.
Look, obviously it's amazing. And I've only ever done it in North Cascades, and they're a great operation. I got to be honest, and I am not paid by Jeff Pincero to say this. For my money, Baldface is still my favorite place for that experience. Sure. I just think it's fantastic.
Were you up there this year at all?
No, I haven't been in a while. I haven't been in quite a while. Back in the salad days in retail, we used to go. I'd been 3 times, and somebody else paid for it, but that dried up.
What's the salad days mean? Money?
Yeah, back when everybody, including the manufacturers, had slush funds and could do stuff like that.
Well, that's how we met initially. It was at one of those things. Is 32 Boot Camp still going?
We didn't actually meet at 32 Boot Camp because I've never been to a 32 Boot Camp. I was trying to place, because Rich our buyer used to always go to 32. We would always kind of make little trades, like, okay, you get Boot Camp, but then I'm going over here. And I was trying to remember, it might have been a Skull Candy or maybe a Forum trip. Is that possible?
No, neither of those. A Burton Summit, maybe a Burton Roundtable.
For sure. I mean, yeah, we definitely did a lot of business with Burton. So
that's funny. I could have sworn that it was a 32 trip.
Yeah, I mean, it's for whatever reason, Rich just kind of gravitated to those. Well, I mean, he rode 32 boots and I rode Burton, so that probably had something to do with it. But I don't know. Weird.
Yeah, the mind plays tricks on you. Well, we definitely met somewhere in the snowboard world.
Oh, for sure. No, I remember. I just don't remember where.
That's funny. So yeah, I'd kind of like to backpedal to those retail days, and maybe an awesome spot to start would be back when you first really decided that you wanted to work in snowboarding retail. What year was that? What was it like? What was your frame of mind? What was going on in your life, and what led you to it?
Right on. Yeah, happy to share that. I guess I didn't grow up, but I spent a lot of formative years in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and I was going to college there, and I was working as a lifeguard in the summers, and I needed some kind of a winter job because it was an outdoor water park, so it was seasonal. And there's this cool little shop down in Albuquerque called the Beach Zone. That it was a skate shop. And actually, the reason it was called the Beach Zone was because they got into it for windsurfing, which they got out of that, but they still liked the retail side of things. And I just liked it because it was a skate shop. I grew up skateboarding. And I like clothes, and they sold bikinis, which when there's bikinis, there's girls. So, so I started working for them, and it was towards the end of the summer. I probably started in like August or September. And then come around October, November, the owner, a guy by the name of Todd Sloan, came out of the back room with a Burton Air 6 and something from Barfoot, and, just these boards. And I was like, what's going on, Todd? And he's like, these are snowboards. You're going to sell them, so you should figure them out. And this was 1990 or 90. So, so I learned how to snowboard on my buddy's borrowed Barfoot, and it just really dug its hooks in. And I finished up college, studied psychology, and I thought I wanted to become a psychologist, and just quickly realized that I didn't have it in me to go for another 6 years of school. And I just looked around and said, gosh, I really, really like this snowboard thing, and maybe I'm just putting off maturity, but I want to pursue it. So after I finished college, I kind of tooled around a little bit in Albuquerque, and then I put together my resume, and I went to Boulder and met with the guys at Twist back when Twist had a retail store. I went to BC and tried to get a job there, and then I flew to Seattle. I had previous experience there and liked the city, and I met with the guys at Borderline. That was the snowboard shop that Sturdivant's used to own, and I met with John. And John hired me. So that's what I did. I just decided, okay, this is the guy that offered me a job. Seattle it is.
And that's like, what, 1994?
I moved to Seattle in September of '95.
Okay.
Yep.
There's two things that really struck me from your story there that were interesting to me. I mean, everything's obviously interesting, and you have this path, but really one that the shop was in the windsurfing business, because I think a lot of what we're going to talk today is about some of the a little bit of the bubble effect in snowboarding, and now that we're on the long declining tail in some ways, and some of the things that are impacted, and then the overarching things that are changing in the retail landscape that also are affecting snowboarding. But windsurfing went through that same thing. I mean, here's a shop in New Mexico. I guess there's lakes there, probably some big lakes, right?
Well, there were in the '80s.
All that water went to California.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. The Elephant Butte, which is a gigantic lake in kind of southeast New Mexico, it just continues to drop and drop. And in fact, it was built with a dam, and that's what caused the butte. And there had been housing for some type of military installation down there. If somebody out there knows, don't quote me. I'm not trying. It's lore. But there were buildings that were built near the edge of this lake, and when they dammed it, they basically flooded all those houses under, I don't know, 10, 20, 50 feet of water. I have no idea. And in the last 5 years, those houses have become visible again. Oh,
wow.
So there's like this marked, like, look at what's happening. I don't know if anybody's listening, but anyway. So yes, there were some lakes, and there was windsurfing in New Mexico, and please proceed. Sorry.
No, that's awesome. I think I've seen some of the pictures of those as they've emerged on like the sensational click on this type of link baiting things,
Right, exactly. It's kind of creepy.
So my uncle, when I moved out here in 1996 to the Washington, D.C. area and worked with him at a shop, he was just coming off of this windsurfing bubble, so to say, where he was actually sponsored by Mistral, and he would always joke about how it was funny that he was sponsored because he was good enough where he could get the board up and cruise around and do some little airs and what have you, but he still lived 4 hours from the ocean, basically, and didn't really have a lake around, was doing this on a weekend warrior recreational level at best. But here, someone had given him, I think, like $5,000 worth of gear. It wasn't a cheap man's sport to get into. Oh. So that, just as we're kind of looking at kind of the arcs of, what happens as something becomes popular, and then you're selling products associated with that thing that's popular, and then all of a sudden it's not popular anymore. That might be something to look back to. Although, snowboarding is very different. It reaches a much broader audience. The other thing that I thought was really interesting about something that you said is that you wanted to be a psychologist, but you didn't want to put the time in to get the rubber stamp or the the placard that hangs on the wall. But you are a psychologist now, and you're using it just instead of sitting one-on-one with somebody and asking them questions about their childhood, you're helping them really understand what customers do when they walk through the door, right?
Yeah, I mean, I could see that. I think that my predilection for that type of scholastic pursuit just comes from the fact that I do like to read people and interact with people, which I think is part of why I enjoyed retail for so many years. When I don't want to get off track here, but when we started looking at, when I say we, I mean John, Logic, and I at SnowCon, a few years back, maybe 5-6 years ago, when we were taking a hard look at our business and recognizing that things were changing and trying to figure out how we were going to adapt, one thing that we talked about for sure was, hey, we have a great name for online. We have a long-standing website name, Snowboard Connection. It's a web connection, blah, blah, blah. We could invest in this. There's no reason we couldn't. We could make this a huge thing. Find some money. There's a lot of money in Seattle. Maybe that's what we should do. And what we both realized is that although that may be possible and even feasible, it wasn't what excited us. Right? Like, okay, I could do that, but that's not the job I want. The job I want is what I have. And I don't know. We may circle back on that, but I think that may be a problem for a lot of long-standing retailers in this business, and frankly, in any business that isn't web-based right now.
I agree. I mean, I think about it all the time. I have a very long retail experience as well. And what is it going to take to be the, I'm trying to search for the right word here, but, the new norm for retail is not just getting by, it's operating upside down. And how long can you operate in debt? And what is it going to take to break that and kind of be disruptive and bring something new to the table to be a successful business? And you're right. We'll get into some of your thoughts there, maybe a little bit down the road. Let's back up to 1995.
So you're wondering about what happened in '95 for me, or did you have something you wanted to talk about with windsurf again? Sorry, I know we got off a.
No worries. Let's back up to where you were in 1995 and how you ended up eventually at SnowCon. Well,
so I did walk into the store, and I kind of got the shine by my buddy Kevin Cortez, who was running the store at the time, and I handed him my resume, and he was kind of like, "Huh, yeah, whatever." And I love the guy, so I can give him this little bit of a hard time. And then John stuck his head up. He had this second level kind of, it's kind of like a mezzanine where his desk was, that you couldn't see him unless he stood up, and he called it the crow's nest. And he stood up and he's like, "Hold on one second." And he comes downstairs all kind of, John's a little crazy, love him. And he's like, "Let me see that resume." And he kind of looked it up and down, and he said, "Well, I don't know." I said, "Okay, well, I'd like to work here. I'm here for another 2 days. So if you'd like to meet me, you give me a call or whatever, that'd be great." And he's like, "Yeah, I can't meet you now." And he actually called me back the next day and interviewed me and said, "I can't pay you much money, but if you move here from Albuquerque, New Mexico, I'll make Seattle work for you." And I decided that was enough for me. I mean, I was a young guy, and, it's like, yeah, let's do it. So I think I moved from Albuquerque to Seattle for maybe minimum wage and plus 50 cents, give or take. It was rough. But
underlying that decision is because you fucking love snowboarding. Like, why else would you do that?
Absolutely. And, I got here, and back then, Washington State had this amazing program where a store for $400 could buy a pass that would get you a lift ticket anywhere on any mountain in the state. So John used to buy 5 of those a year, which basically meant that everyone that worked at SnowCon could go to any mountain they wanted for free all year.
That's awesome.
That, I got to do what I wanted to do, and to your point, I fucking love snowboarding. I got to check out all the mountains. I made lots of great friends, had lots of great times. And then, the store was doing great, but we were in this transition zone, or transition time, I think, that we made successfully, and a lot of shops didn't. And what I think happened is right around then, probably mid-'90s to the end of the '90s, I think that the industry started to mature enough to the point that just having a snowboard dealership wasn't enough to make you successful. And I think that had been the case for a long time, kind of probably what happened with windsurfing too. For a while, there were just so few places to find them that if you were able to get them into your store, you could be a dick and still sell them.
Yep.
And that's kind of what we were known as at SnowCon. And I'll say that right to John's face. He knows it. I mean, customer service wasn't the top thing. One of my coworkers, his sales pitch for boots was, he'd put them on their feet and tie them up, and they'd say, he's kind of hurt. And his response would be, "Well, welcome to snowboarding." No lie. I heard him say it often. He also had a club foot, so whatever. I love the guy. His name's Lieb. Anyway, and he's a diesel mechanic now in Albuquerque, which is so weird because he's not from there. Full circle. Anyway, so we kind of started realizing, like, hey, guys, this isn't really working, and plus it's just not that fun to be a dick. And so we started really focusing on that, focusing on what the store looked like, just kind of changing our tune. And honestly, I would say that one of the biggest changes came from Atlee Treasure and Jin Yang, who Atlee used to be known as Buck, and I'm You may have met him at some point, Nate. I don't know. He's a rep now. But they moved out from Buckman's in Pennsylvania together and worked for John. And when they started, long side story, I was back in Albuquerque. My mother was pretty sick, and so I was gone for a few months. And they kind of came in and told John, like, dude, what you're doing is not working. And it was kind of a regime change, and we really redirected our focus. And, you know, those guys really made a big difference and kind of made it into that next kind of golden period, I think, where there were a lot of shops that closed. And so if you were still around and you had the dealerships and you were cool or nice, you could sell a lot of snowboards, and we did. You know, it was good times, man. Pow trips and, you know, lots of beer and weed and, I don't know if I'm supposed to say that. And just, you know, it was what we all fell in love with. And then kind of the next challenge that I think we all faced, which we all know, is the advent of the internet, economic downturn, and, you know, a lot of shops hit the rocks, including us.
Yeah, one of the mantras that the shop that I spent most of my years at, Pit Crew, both the owners there would always say that a good year can make you and a good year can break you. If you set the bar at that good year and you just start running your business with that kind of cash flow, like it's 2004 and we've reordered Burton until they're tapped out, and, you know, we're pre-selling boards left and right, and it seems like there's no end, you know, and we can do whatever we want. You know, we're selling snowboards. We could be dicks.
Yeah. And it's intoxicating.
Yeah, exactly. If that's the bar, you're out of business in 2 years. Because then, especially here in this area, or look at your winter this year, right? You were just on the snow today at Stevens Pass. That's going to directly affect retail. People are not snowboarding in the Pacific Northwest because they can't.
No, and it's happening. Shops are closing. I mean, more shops. You know, Side Effect down in Eugene, in Bend, James announced about, I don't know, a month ago that he's done. And that's a great shop run by a great dude who's a real good snowboarder, you know? And there's more coming. You know, I don't want to mention anything because I don't know what's public and what's not. But yeah, shops are struggling. And it's not just here. I mean, there's no question that when it snows, I mean, this isn't rocket science. When it snows, you can have a good year, and when it doesn't snow, you're not likely to have a good year. But man, it's not just isolated in the Northwest.
No, you're absolutely right. And that when we were kind of talking before, we were talking about, like, what are your thoughts on the future of retail? And one of the things that I come to all the time is the shop has to be for the perfect, like the most bulletproof shop that's not going to have any major issues, barring, you know, a huge mistake from the owner or something. But
drugs.
Yeah, exactly. That's the road that I was kind of going down, but I didn't want to say anything. It would have to be near the snow, so a resort shop. But then the challenge that the average resort shop faces is that they don't own the real estate, and that it's a really high rent, and it's very seasonal.
Man, you and I are on the same bandwidth, Nate. I have been thinking so much about, you know, I don't beat myself, and I'm proud of the legacy that we left, but I think a lot about why we failed. And there's no question that the expenses that you face trying to be a snowboard shop in a metropolitan area, they're staggering. And if you look around, they don't exist anymore. In almost any real big city, there just aren't snowboard shops. I mean, there's a couple here and there, but a lot of them are factory owned.
That's right.
Like they're Burton, or, well, they're probably just Burton. You know, I mean, San Francisco, there used to be probably 10 core shops, maybe 20. I don't even know. Now there's 2, and they're both owned by Burton. One in Berkeley and one in San Francisco. You know, Portland has a couple still, but I wouldn't call it a metropolis. The rents aren't quite the staggering rate that they are around here. And I just, you know, circle back real quick to you were talking about at Pit Crew, they said a good year can make you and it can also ruin you.
Yep.
I think that we fell into that, and we got ourselves in a position where by moving into a more expensive space, there's a lot of things that contributed to the downfall, but one of them definitely was that weight of that rent. And we had just seen growth after growth after growth, and we were like, well, this is just going to keep happening. No problem. We can pay this rent. Of course we can. And the first year we moved there was our highest revenue ever. So it wasn't like we moved there and then things went to shit. We moved there and things were really good. I mean, we were having great numbers. But right after that, the economy fell apart. Sierra Snowboards started selling snowboards for $100 and undermined so much business. And thanks, Michael Harash. And, put the hurt on shops like us. And it just, we started to realize like, well, whoa, we're not going to get 20% growth this year. Shit, we're going to be happy if we're flat, and flat isn't profitable.
Yeah.
So it just became this tough cycle where, we had set our bar, like you said, we'd set our bar to this new level and expected that we would get there. And John was saying would say things to me like, well, we can't buy this much stuff. We're not going to be able to sell it. And my retort was, well, John, if we don't sell this much stuff, we're not going to pay the rent. So what are we going to do? And that's a tough spot to be in.
Yeah, and online hit everybody that year.
Oh.
We were starting to play in it, and we were in development of a website. And it's not like it is today where you can go on WordPress or Squarespace or one of these things and have a website in the same day. Yeah. So these guys that were first to the table were taking up huge market share. And the pinnacle was right around that time, 2008, 2009 for us, when we were max inventory still because we were coming off some of those big years. And I was the buyer. I was buying too much, to be quite frank, for the business that we were doing, because I still had that recency effect of, just a few years ago we were selling these left and right. So
it'll turn around. It'll be fine.
We had apartments above the shop, and the FedEx guy would normally deliver burden, and they would come in these long snowboard boxes, and you can see them from a mile away. Well, one day he brings one in, and he goes, oh, can you hold this for the guys upstairs? And it's from Burton. We're like, what the fuck? Are you kidding me? Like, this is weird. Like, why wouldn't they just come here? It was the same fucking board that we had in the shop. He bought it
ordered it from someone else.
From someone else. For much, much less.
Yep.
And I don't even know if he did come in during the shop to scope it out. I mean, I imagine you would. You live right there. But I didn't know. I didn't see that happen. I think he was just a different mentality. He was younger. It had already shifted. He was already someone who just buys things online. I don't even think he looked.
Well, that entire transition from a purely brick and mortar and a little bit of mail order business to one that could be had online, obviously it was disruptive. We all know this. The thing that I always think back on about it, though, is, we jumped on early. We built a website early, and, we rebuilt it because, of course, as you know, like you said, early on, they sucked, and you figure it out. But I can remember having long discussions with sales managers and VPs of sales, whatever, about like, hey, what are you seeing out there? What should we be doing? How can we be successful online, in your opinion? And over again, what I heard was, look, you guys do a great job at brick and mortar. All you need to do is translate that experience to the web, make sure that they have this great experience and can understand your vibe, and you're going to be successful. And we believed that, and that's what we tried to do, and that's horseshit.
Yep.
And I don't blame those guys. I don't think that they were purposely misleading me. They just thought that was the answer, and it's not the fucking answer. The answer is the almighty dollar. And that's just the way it is.
The only thing I would add to that advice that I received is you should buy more of our stuff.
Whoa,
you should have a huge selection.
You're going to sell it online.
Yeah, you need to have everything. If you're going to be online, you want to compete with everyone else, you have to have it. So buy more.
Yep. And, Burton had those really high standards to be a link dealer or whatever, and some guys bit off and did really well, and some guys bit off and went out of business.
Yeah.
And, I don't know. I sense when I talk to my friends who are retailers, or even friends who work in the industry. I think that, if you look at the history of what Burton has done in terms of their distribution plans, there's a lot of people who have some anger towards them or resentment or whatever. And I don't think that that's necessarily fair. I don't think it squares with most of my experience with people at Burton. Are there a couple people that are dicks? Of course. But that's true anywhere. And I think that really they were just trying to find a way through this, just like we were.
Yep.
And maybe they got a little more aggressive than some other people, but they also had more on the line. And, however it plays out, I don't know. I mean, maybe they've contributed to the downfall of some shops, but I don't think that I don't think somebody sat in a room at Burton and thought, we should make this change because it's going to hurt our core shops. That just doesn't make any sense.
No, quite the opposite. I mean,
yeah, they don't want that to happen, but exactly. you gotta find a place to sell your gear. When your distribution channel is shrinking, sometimes you have to make tough decisions. Seems like. Yeah,
like selling online direct or opening up the flagship stores.
Yeah, you got it. Whatever. I mean, virtually every snowboard brand in the market now sells direct, at least somewhat. Virtually everyone. There's a couple of outliers. And then some of those guys are doing things like, well, now we're going to let you sell on Amazon. Like, whoa, that scares me even more. I'd rather be selling, if I were still a retailer, I'd rather at least be selling against the manufacturer because I have a relationship with them. If you open up that door with Amazon, I mean, there's no relationship to be had.
Well, the other thing that becomes an issue there is your margin gets chopped more because Amazon is lining their pockets. And
of course,
it's always been this mantra that Amazon is out there, they're doing their thing, but they're operating at a loss. And I don't know if you've heard that. And that was been true to an extent up until this last quarter.
Yep.
And I don't know the number, but I believe it's in the billions. They've kind of crossed the line. Yeah, exactly. They're in the black, and it's big time.
And they want to sell everything to everyone. It's crazy. I mean, yeah, we followed Amazon very carefully. Of course, they're based here, and they opened up well, they didn't just open, but over time they built and then occupied over 1 million square feet of office space, 2 blocks from Snowboard Connection's flagship location. And we thought, wow, this might help us, right?
Right.
But those people don't shop at brick and mortar. At least that was our experience. We saw hardly any business from Amazon.
They're ordering from their desks on Cyber Monday.
Well, and that's the other crazy thing, Nate. I have friends who work there. They don't get discounts. From like if you order on Amazon as an Amazon employee, there's no deal. But it's just expected that if you work there, that's where you shop. Like people raise an eyebrow if you say, "Oh, I got this at this little boutique down by my house." Oh, really? Why didn't you buy it on Amazon? It's a different place.
The culture, drinking the Kool-Aid.
Yeah, and that's what I hear. I've never worked there. Obviously, these are anecdotes, but I have friends who do work there, and so that's tough to compete with.
Have you ever bought anything on Amazon personally?
Of course.
Yeah.
You bet, all the time. My wife has a Prime membership.
Yeah, me too.
We stream video. There's lots of stuff that I buy on there, and I don't consider myself to be a turncoat or anything. It's just that's reality.
It's the culture shift.
It's a culture shift. I have 3 kids. I work full time, and it's the same thing that everybody does. And here's that leads me to a point that I wanted to make sure I made in this interview, and it's tangentially related, but no, it's pretty related. I was at Snowboard Connection off and on for 19 years. So if anybody wants to fucking come at me about whether or not I was committed, they can bring it. I love that store, and I love snowboarding. I also recognize now that I'm outside of it that I had blinders on. And we tried really hard, John and I would have talks about this, we tried really hard to not do that. We wanted to stay, on top of what's going on out there and be aware. But even a simple thing, this is my little anecdote, a simple thing, let's say I wanted to buy a pair of shoes. That would mean that I'd get up from my desk, I'd walk down to my shoe wall, I'd find a pair of shoes that I liked, then I'd go back in the back and put them on, and buy them. That was it. That was shoe shopping for me. Now, if I want to buy a pair of shoes, I can buy whatever fucking shoes I want. Right?
It's all a click away.
It's all, or even if I just want to go to a different store, even if I want to walk into a Nordstrom, whatever. But what I'm getting at is, I think that I was guilty of thinking that, we need to try and sell as many different products to our customers who love us as we can. So we do, all these different categories and accessories and shoes and blah, 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 believing that they're going to buy those from us. But that's just not how it is. There's so many places to buy things, and so many places to buy things more conveniently and cheaper than we could provide them, that, it just becomes painfully clear to me now that I'm able to be a little more objective, that particular type of business, and I'm not saying all brick and mortar retail, but the business that we were running, it was not sustainable. And if it hadn't been last year, it would have been next year, or it certainly would have been this year, actually,
right.
with this winter.
I've thought about this a ton too, and I think it's scalability, because that customer loyalty is there for everyone that you, Adam, can grow a relationship with.
Right.
And assuming that they still live in your town where your shop is, or
right.
that they have what you want online. You start to get farther steps away depending on location, and it's all about being where the customer is. And that's where the internet's so powerful, because it is where the customer is all the time.
Right. And that also brings up this other point that I used to talk to my employees about, which is, I had this theory, I call it the pallet theory, whatever. You can lump that if you want. But 15 years ago, I felt like our role as a snowboard shop was to create a palette. These are the choices that we, that we created for our customers. And they came to us because they wanted that guidance. And so as far as we were concerned, there weren't other things out there. And as far as a lot of those customers were concerned, there weren't other things. They came in, they were engulfed in the store. They decided from this palette what worked for them, and they were happy and they left. But now, over the last 10 years, people have become very savvy at doing their own research. And so people come in and say, I want blah, 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 blah. And if as a retailer, if as a retailer you don't have it ready for them right there, why would they listen to you about something else? They can just go on their phone and buy it. Hey, you didn't have it? I tried. I came to see you. This is what I want. I'm buying it.
Or, and I'm sure you've had this one, can you do it for this price? I've just found it on my phone for $80 less.
Of course. Well, so that I talked about doing launching a new type of retail within Snowboard Connection where I called it market pricing. So what if we just advertised that you don't pay a penny over the cheapest price online for a product at Snowboard Connection? So you come in, whatever item you want. Don't even talk about price. Don't worry about it. This is the boot you want. Great. Let's go over to the scanner. Boop. Google price. Boop. Okay. List is $199. Looks like so-and-so has it for $139. That's your price. And then just do that for a year. And then just watch our margins. And at the end of the year, take it back to the manufacturer and say, hey, so-and-so, your margin is great. We have no problems. We're going to reorder. So-and-so, your margin is horrible. We need to get this money back from you. You need to subsidize us with some markdowns, or I'm not going to do business with you anymore because you're not watching your product. It's out there and it's marked down.
That's a fascinating concept because, as you're talking through that, I'm thinking, well, you need to just make an agreement at the beginning of the year that you're going to lock in that our margin is X. And that's one of the challenges with snowboarding and skateboarding and a lot of these things that even though it doesn't seem like it when you set up a snowboard and it's $1,000 boots, binding, and board, or just board and binding for somebody, but it's a poor man's sport in a lot of ways in comparison to like auto racing or something where, $1,000 is like not even a wheel. But it hasn't grown. And the prices haven't kept up. When I was a kid in the 80s and I went to my skateboard shop and bought a complete skateboard, it was more than has been the past 13 years of me selling complete skateboards on average. So it hasn't even kept up with inflation, and that's going to crunch margins for everybody because the manufacturer and the producer of the raw materials, all that shit's more expensive.
And so they don't have that flexibility. Like if I went to Burton at the end of a year and said, hey guys, you're, on this much volume, you're this low on our on our margin. We need this kind of markdown or credit to continue. They'd probably just look at it and go, no, we're not doing that. And so that's part of where I was like, well, I don't know if I really want to pursue this plan because it could just backfire in my face, right? It's a tough one.
It's kind of, I guess Amazon does that to some extent, right? I think that's some of what they're doing is crawling the web with all their Amazon partners and presenting you that option, at least as a consumer, to buy it at the lowest price. It's not always the prime item. It's not always from the most reputable seller, but
it's cheapest.
You can take a dice roll and get it cheap. Yeah.
Yeah.
So as we're building this like impervious snowboard shop, it was really interesting to me that you said that some of the folks that came over were from Buckman's, because they're pretty close to the model that seems to work really well, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know Buckman's a whole lot. I know they've won a lot of awards, and Atlee and Jin are good friends. But I you probably know more about their business model than I do.
It's my understanding, and I wasn't going to use them by name, so hopefully I don't say anything that would upset anybody here. But it's my understanding that they've diversified businesses, and that's what I really see as being the thing for a shop of the future. And I always look to things that I like. Like I used to drink a lot of coffee. It was like, it's got to be a coffee, pizza, beer place that also does snowboards and skateboards. But they're smart. They do something that's way more high margin than coffee, pizza, or beer. They do some industrial chemicals.
Yes, I've heard this. I think you're right. I think they do like pool chemicals, right?
I think that's it. So it doesn't even line up. And I think back to when I initially moved out here in 96, 95, and I first worked at Ski Chalet, and they did patio furniture in the summer. And again, it's almost like it doesn't correlate for me. I'm not passionate about, I'm like skeptical about the ski stuff. I'm only here because of the snowboards. Patio furniture, fuck that. I'm not going to work here in the summer.
I give two shits about that.
But I remember meeting the owner one day, and he was passionate about patio furniture, and he didn't really even care about the patio furniture as much as he did about the margins that were in the patio furniture.
Right.
So I think that shop of the future is like diversified. It's either in the right location, owning its own real estate, hopefully fully paid for, doesn't have to
that's the key.
Chunk anybody money every month, and it's where the customers are, and it's doing several other things. I read something on the internet this morning that's saying that most of the multimillionaires have 7 different income streams. So just depending on snowboarding, for one, there's probably very few multimillionaires that just are getting their money purely from snowboarding.
Yeah, that's interesting. I struggle, like, personally with getting involved when we were at retail. When I was doing retail, I struggled personally with getting involved with something I didn't care about, because I just felt like it took away that legitimacy. Like I wanted people to come in and feel like, wow, these guys really give a shit about this. We talked about doing other things. We didn't talk about patio furniture, but something. To your point, we kicked around all sorts of things, like something that's complimentary, something that's busy in the summer. Yeah. And we came up with surf, and surf's the worst business in the world. So there you go.
Is it really? I don't know. I'm only just now in these past few years getting into surfing.
Surf margins are horrible. Talk about a sport that hasn't kept up with the cost of living, and I realize there's fewer and fewer of them, but like the actual guy who shapes surfboards, those prices have barely budged in 20 years. And I was talking to Todd Kaminsky. He's TDK. I don't even know if he still shapes boards, but he's out of Southern California. We used to carry his boards. And he's like, man, everything that I do has gone up in price. All of the materials, I have to use all these different glasses and different resins now that are VOC free, and they cost more money, which is great. But, blah, blah, blah. I don't get to charge anymore for this stuff. And it still takes me the same amount of time to shape a surfboard. And so it just drives down the margins, and, you might make 20 points on a surfboard, and then you ship it and you pay your shipping, maybe you're down to 17. And then if it comes damaged, you're kind of screwed. It's tough.
Yeah, it's not a business that outsources over international borders well just because of that. Maybe you can get the less expensive labor, and maybe you can even get them trained up to really high quality, but then you still have to ship it, and then you get bit in the ass because this is not something easy to ship in the scope of things. It's a big surfboard. It's going to cost a lot of money.
Fragile.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of why epoxy boards have, where there was a big push with them, and a lot of guys were making those in Thailand, to your point, and they could build them well. They didn't care if it was, I mean, the guy manufacturing them doesn't even have to know what a surfboard's for, as long as it looks good. But unfortunately, that's not what surfers want. They want hand-shaped surfboards, and that you can't do that.
As to kind of shift gears here, have you thought about the difference between snowboard shops, ski shops, and pure snowboard shops? One of the things I've heard multiple times is that the ski shop will continue. Two things, I guess, really, because it's attracting the older audience with more money. The skis are generally more expensive, and then the bindings need to be mounted. You need to have the service.
That's it right there. I've had multiple conversations with friends about that, Nate. I think that as great and awesome and useful as snowboard inserts are, that is the one invention in all of the history of snowboarding that has undermined brick and mortar. Because if you had to have your bindings mounted by someone, it's going to cut down on the number of times people buy them online. Yep. And that's just reality. And obviously we're not going to go backwards. And the real bummer is most people, in my opinion, do need someone to mount a binding.
Absolutely.
How many times I've seen somebody, yeah, you got this on the board. It's not going to come off, but good God, you got the left foot, swapped with the right foot, and you got one with toe overhang and one with heel overhang, and you're going to have a horrible day on this, and you're probably going to stop snowboarding.
Yeah, I saw somebody last weekend pigeon-toed on the snow.
Oh, it breaks your heart, right? You're like, dude, you could be having so much fun.
Exactly.
This is awesome, and you hate it.
On the other hand, I have heard from friends that some sort of insert technology is coming to some set of skis, or some skis are coming with bindings on them now, so they're kind of potentially shooting themselves in the foot as they take this one thing from snowboarding that they probably shouldn't take.
Right. We should send them a memo. Don't do it. Yeah, Solomon did a thing a few years ago. Well, man, it's probably been at least a decade now, called the pilot system. And maybe that's what you're referring to. I don't think it's still around. I don't follow ski tech, but I worked for Solomon for a couple of years, so I was up to date on it. And basically, there's a channel that goes through the sidewall, and then the binding fits over that channel, and a bolt goes through it. And there's one at the toe and one at the heel. And the idea was, I guess, the binding can move more freely on top of the ski.
Okay.
But I don't think they make that anymore, and I bet that's why. Or maybe nobody liked it. I don't know.
Yeah, they probably were just wise enough to look at it from a business point of view. The shops probably started to push back, I would imagine, and were heard.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, we let those cows out of the gate, and they're not coming home. So
maybe you could share a little bit about what you're doing today at Mervin.
My position at Mervin basically is it's kind of loosely defined, and I kind of like it that way. But it's a marketing position. The title is retail marketing manager, but I actually report to sales, so I'm paid by the sales department. And I'm in a really kind of fortunate position because I have so much experience and history with the people inside the building that I was easily able to insert myself and understand kind of I don't want to say politics, because I think that has kind of a bad connotation, but just, the relationships that exist. And what I am trying to do, I mean, I kind of created this job for myself, and what I'm trying to do is help retail prosper and thrive, and doing that through a pretty aggressive and interesting, in my opinion, POP program, where we're actually building these displays in our own factory, which gives us really quick turnaround time and the ability to do some custom stuff. We're also finally
for
doing
the non-retail folks, POP is point of purchase, and it's usually some sort of maybe a cardboard picture or something that you can physically put your hands on that's in addition to the product.
Right, and maybe a sign could also mean, a lot of people stretch it out to mean displays. So like, a rack to put your soft goods on, like your outerwear or whatever. But, all that stuff is kind of the concrete, what is my job? Also, in my opinion, more importantly, is I'm kind of a conduit, I think, between a pretty, well, I don't know how to say this. I'm there to provide a great communication conduit between the brick and mortar retail channel and Mervin. And it's not because Mervin doesn't want to listen, because they do. They care a lot, which is why they hired me. But Mervin is a pretty tight crew. There's not a lot of people to do, and we do a lot of stuff. And so they, I believe, hired me because they know that I have that retail background, and I know after a quick discussion with someone, I think I can grasp what their concerns and needs are, where a lot of other people might not be able to do that. So that's my goal.
And you're just going to give a different type of feedback than a rep.
Well, right, exactly. And our reps are great, but for sure, I went to the first sales meeting, and there were things that were being tossed around that I just, I'd stand up and go, "You guys are fucking crazy." And I don't want to give concrete examples. I'm not trying to undermine anybody.
Well, no, absolutely not. Much like you had the blinders on in retail,
exactly.
You can't see beyond your current role sometimes.
Right. Like, guys, that's not reality. You want that to happen. That's not how it works in a retail store, and here's why. And they're like, oh, right. And I think that'll help. I mean, Mervin, earlier we talked about whether or not Burton was this demon that was someone behind the scenes was trying to find a way to hurt their core retail. And of course, that's just ridiculous. It's the same thing with us. Everyone there wants core retail and brick and mortar retail to thrive, because we all recognize that that's, as much as the internet is an important part of our business, that touch and feel and that experience is how you avoid having somebody with, pigeon-toed bindings. There's just something you can't replace there. And so we want that channel to thrive and to find a way to continue. And, it's just getting tougher and tougher. So that's my primary focus, is how do we help those dudes? Not that we're going to stop paying attention to our brick or online business, of course not. But how do we help those dudes?
With Mervin having so many shops all across the country and in a couple different verticals, I know that I'm a fan of their surf stuff, and maybe that's a little smaller market. The snow is probably the primary stuff. They even have skateboards. How do you decide which shops to focus your time on in your role?
Well, so the first thing I did, Dan McNamara is the VP of sales. So obviously he had some input there. I mean, he's my boss. So I worked with him. And then also I reached out to every rep and said, I want you guys to send me your top 5 or 6 brick and mortar retailers in your region that, for whatever reason, you think I should talk to them, because I can't possibly meet them all in my first, I've been there 3 months. So I can't go out and meet them all immediately, but let me know, like, who should I be talking to and why? And they gave me all these contacts, and then I started doing research on every one of those shops, everything. Check out their website. How do they rate on Yelp? What do their websites even look like? Do they sell on their website? Do they not? What brands do they carry besides ours? How long have they been in business? All that stuff. And then I sent each of them emails of introduction and started to, open a conversation with all of them and figure out, what we can do. I mean, the the harsh reality, I think when I came into this, I was a little Pollyanna, and I just had this view like, God, we got to save core retail, however you want to define that. We have to. And what I've come to realize is the reality is we don't need to save core retail. We need to save the guys who are trying.
Right.
And there are plenty of guys out there, I'm sorry, that do a shitty job. And they're going to fail. They are. And that sucks because these are people's livelihoods. But I mean, I've been to core retail shops where they can't even fucking vacuum. If you can't vacuum, if you can't clean your bathroom, if you can't rent snowboards, if you can't service snowboards, if you don't hire the local kid who used to buy skateboard wheels from you and just hung out and drove you crazy until you finally started paying them, if you're not doing those things, then you're not going to make it. And even if you are, you might not make it.
Hey, man, I was that kid.
So was I. Yeah, I mean, that's how I got most of my employees. And they're the best. They're the best employees because they care so damn much about it.
Yeah, they're passionate about it. They want to be there. You're fulfilling, by letting that kid work there, you've fulfilled their dream.
Which is awesome. And it breaks my heart when I think that there are fewer and fewer venues for that to happen, but that's
then
the way it is right now.
You take the blinders off and you look back at the broader scale and you look at malls and you look at Sears and all these other retailers, brick and mortar retailers. They're having the same problems.
Yeah.
And
malls, it's crazy. There's a couple of standouts, but the malls suck. Have you been to a mall recently?
No.
Good God. They're horrible. Anyway, I took my kids to the mall and I was like, man, this is not the mall that I used to remember. Janky ass stores. There's no way they're paying full rent. Empty stores. Yeah.
We have two malls in my hometown, and I think it's a dynamic that lots of places say. There's like the good mall, and then there's like the bad mall, and it's always the newer mall and the older mall. And I went in the bad mall a couple years ago, and it was exactly what you described. There was like these import stores, and then there's like dollar stores, and then there's like
grocery store,
99-cent store, 98-cent store next to it. And none of them have any. I mean, there's just shit in piles everywhere. It's not even like a store. It's like some of them I'm pretty sure people were living in some of them.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not what it used to be. So that's the internet. And I mean, here's the thing. I used to be, when I was watching all this unfold and I would watch as a retailer, I would watch my manufacturing partners make decisions about, let's say, distribution that I thought were boneheaded. And I get really angry and upset and reactionary and blame them. And you guys are just trying to undermine us and all that. That's not the situation. We're in the midst of, and it's not over yet, we're in the midst of a paradigm shift in the way that things happen in the world. And this is kind of an abstract way to look at it, but if brick and mortar retail, and I don't care if it's individually owned or if it's chain or what, if brick and mortar retail as an entity were somehow able to communicate seamlessly with one another and had decided to shift the way they do business to better counter what was going on online, or even shift their business more efficiently to an online model, then there wouldn't have been the opportunity for these kind of upstarts, smaller companies or ones that are huge now like Amazon, to fill this void. But once the technology was out there, people started speaking with their dollars, and somebody chased those dollars, and some people didn't. And even at SnowCon, we had a great website that did a lot of orders there, but that wasn't our core competency, and it wasn't what we loved. And that's just what the manufacturers are dealing with now. They look at the situation and go, look, we need to sell X number of snowboards to be profitable and to keep doing this business. We used to sell that many to brick and mortar. Well, now there's a third as many brick and mortar stores as there were 10 years ago. What am I going to do? Well, I got to sell to, whoever. I'm not going to name any names because I'm not trying to make enemies with anybody. There are websites that, they can sell a lot of product and do it very well and efficiently. And that's what they have to do. That's who they have to play with.
It's interesting that you mentioned just really not being passionate about the online space and just kind of also identifying that there was an opportunity there. When I first became familiar with Amazon, it was a book website. You could buy books there. Eventually, their business model changed, and they said, okay, we've got a way to sell things on the internet. What if we sell something other than books? What if we sell everything? And so that's the person who took the opportunity, and it can't just be, again, coming from a place with the blinders on. It's not just the snowboard industry that these types of folks are hitting. It's every industry. So we just are talking about this because it's where we come from. They're stealing our passion. It's got to be affecting people that, I mean, look at the book industry. How many little bookshops are there on the street anymore?
Hardly.
Yeah, hardly any.
Do you know why Amazon started with books?
No.
They started with books because it was something that a lot of people buy, and you don't need to see it before you buy it. Short of, obviously, there are like artist monographs and specialty stuff. But I'm just talking about, you want to buy a book to read, you know what it's going to be. It's going to be the same product everywhere. It's easily commodifiable. And that's why they picked on that. And that's the thing that is the, that's the strength of the internet, is if you can narrow it down to a SKU or just whatever, some identifier that this is the product that I'm looking for a lot of people, most of the time, it is probably the better way to buy it. And I'm sorry that's true, but I mean, and when I say that, I'm not trying to be like a harbinger of doom. It's just, look at the market. That's what's happened. People have spoken that way. They've said, hey, you know what? I need wiper blades. Okay, well, Amazon has them, and they're cheaper than shucks. So that's why they buy them. I don't need them today.
Well, I took a lot of heat back in the early 2000s as being one of the first online adopters to buy stuff online, because we were fighting it at first as kind of a culture at the shop I was at, is like, oh, well, you're not going to, until we have a website, you're not going to, almost that same drinking the Kool-Aid if you're at Amazon, you're not going to buy stuff online. And I did. I thought it was fucking cool. Like, I can get shit from all over the world. I'm going to try and get some of that shit. I can get a skateboard that I had, look for my first skateboard again. I can find it on eBay. Fuck yeah, I'm going to get it. I'm going to sell stuff on there too if I have old stuff. I really adopted it, and I didn't take offense when customers would bring up online in the store, and that was a big hurdle for us, because as the customers' buying patterns were changing, they were talking about buying somewhere else right in front of your face, which had never happened before, and that hurt a lot of egos.
Yep, I know. And if you gave them a hard time about it, are they going to come back?
No.
Of course not. If somebody gives you shit, you're just going to be like, oh, that's cool. We differ. I'm not going to shop there anymore. When I look at the future of retail, brick and mortar retail, I really see that it's not going to be what we know now. And, I think the only stores that will be the same 10 years from now as they are now are ones that are selling things that, like a 7-Eleven. They're not going to go away, because people need that. People need their beer right now, or maybe they ran out of antiperspirant and they got to run in there. But there's so many things that people they're happy to buy them online. And I think that what you can't replicate, to your point with snowboard, is like, if you're at the mountain, then you can focus on the demo experience, and you can focus on, you're actually kind of capitalizing on that, well, I need it now thing. I forgot my goggles. Well, you're not going to order them online. You're going to go into the shop and you're going to buy them. But, the other thing that I think is going to happen is, I think that retail is going to mutate into even more of a third place. And, meaning like, home is first place, work is second place. Your third place is your gathering space. And it's going to be different for everybody. Maybe it's a brewery tasting room started by a pro snowboarder who, his buddy's a skater, and they have a half pipe in the tasting room. And then there's also, their friend started a bike company. I don't know. I mean, I don't think there's a known what's the word, formula, I guess. But it's not going to be what it is. That's what I firmly believe. It's just not.
Yeah, and you're kind of describing these places that I've seen proposed a couple of times on the internet, these huge, like, extreme sportsplex. Like, there was going to be one up in just outside of New York City, like in a skateboard park, and then it'll also have, like, an internal snowboard park and retail, and just it'll be like this awesome place. Of course, that's on a very, very corporate, multi-million-dollar level, but
Right.
maybe it's that. Maybe it's something that we haven't thought of yet. Maybe it's something to do with the 3D printing revolution that's coming,
Yep.
you know, where I'm just going to type into my phone, or I'm just going to think into my phone or on my iWatch or whatever by then, and my home printer is going to print out the shit that I need to go to the mountain.
You're not that's not crazy talk. I mean, they're printing cars now.
Yeah, piece by piece. Yeah,
I mean, yeah, I don't know. I wish that I could wave my magic wand and say, okay, it's going to be the way that it was back in '95, because I loved that. But also, I'll be honest, there are things about today that I love, and that's the reality, is that's where, most people fall there. They're like, hey, this is cool. This is new. This is different. And what I want to try and do in my role at Mervin is work with the people who don't want to blame the manufacturers,
right?
Who want to recognize that, like, hey, we're all in this together, because that's how it was. That's how I feel like it used to be, and we're all in this together, and we've got these interesting problems to tackle. So let's find a way to work on that and work together, and and who knows, maybe there'll be some interesting coalitions between manufacturers and retailers. Obviously there's already models out there, especially in the streetwear world, where the manufacturer runs a portion of a store for a retailer. Who knows? Maybe that's where it goes.
Interesting. Well, as we start to wind down here, man, you've got my interest peaked. When's your next helicopter day going to be?
Well, I'm going to tell you right now, we run a tight ship at Mervin, and that's just not something that looks to be in the future. Personally, I don't know. It's funny. Quick little anecdote. I used to give Pete Sari, one of the founders of Mervin, shit, because as they had this, what some would call meteoric growth with the advent of Madden Attraction and then Banana and, kind of all that, I'd tell him, like, hey, guys, I think I can say this to you because we're friends. You never fucking do any cool retailer trips like that. You do some cool little stuff, but, like, you don't do the boondoggles that some of the other companies do. Why is that? And Pete was like, look, man, I work, and I don't want to not have a day job. I don't ever want to sit on my laurels. I don't want to be the guy out there being this corporate figurehead that flies around and takes people on these crazy trips and gets sidetracked, because I give a fuck, and I'm here every day, and that's what I want to do. And I was like, I can't do anything but respect that. So,
And that's totally true from my experience with Mervin. I've called up to deal with them on several different fronts, some even warranting products, and been patched directly to Pete for warranty, which is like
crazy,
mind-blowing. Like, how does dude have time to deal with me, like, worried about, like, a sidewall that's separated that probably even shouldn't be a warranty, but he's going to take care of anyways because they're fucking cool.
He cares, man. I love the guy. I mean, he's like, yeah, that's why. So personally, I don't know. I've never paid for my own helicopter day. So I don't know if I will. Like I said, I got 3 kids, and life's great, but 3 kids are expensive.
Well, if there's a Mervin marketing, brainstorming, retail summit that happens to be on a helicopter, just keep me in the loop. Just shoot me an email.
I'll make sure that we have some representation.
Oh, right on, brother. You have any other thoughts as we wrap up here?
I just, I guess the only thing that I want to make sure people take away from this is, our exit from the snowboard business at Snowboard Connection was really hard. And we did the best that we could to not screw anybody in the industry and to not, leave any bad blood anywhere. But what I took from it was that our model was dead, because we did what we set out to do really, really well, in my opinion. We really wanted to be customer focused, and we wanted to have the best customer service and knowledge and a great selection. I think we fired on all cylinders. I think we really did what we set to do, and what we set to do it wasn't what people were asking for. And that was the hard thing to swallow. It's like, hey, we knocked it out of the park, but it's the wrong park. So I guess what I really want anybody who's a retailer out there to hear is, like, you got to really look at your business and make sure that you're working on the problem that people want you to work on. And that's going to vary from city to city and place to place. And I do think that, I don't have a simple answer, but I think that working on experiential things that you cannot replicate online is going to be key. Finding ways to get into demoing and really getting people a hands-on experience could be helpful. But I guess I just really want everybody to, not give up hope. I think that there's a really important place for brick and mortar retail, and I think that it's a really vibrant part of snowboarding, and that's where the story lives. That's where the history lives. And that's not to say that if you bought a board online, you made the wrong choice. It's a different choice. But that history and love that you can feel when you actually talk to somebody, I'd hate to see that disappear. So keep up the fight.
Awesome words, man. It's so interesting that our heads are in the same place around this. And I just know so many folks that are in that world and use this term very endearingly, of the blinders on, and hey, it's the shop culture, and you're going to buy from shop X for the rest of my life because that's the way it is, regardless of the level of customer service that they're giving, or if they have the products that I want or not. And you kind of kicked me into a thought of what happens for those shops that are out there fighting the good fight and adjusting and changing with the marketplace and doing the right things, vacuuming every day, cleaning the glass and windows every day, even though it feels a little bit like work. When that other shop that popped up next to you or 2 blocks away or whatever that's competing with you that isn't doing all those little things that feel like work disappears, sometimes you'll have some really good years.
Absolutely.
Just because you've been kind of staying the path and doing the things that you knew were right, even though that all of a sudden everything got really popular around you and there's 3 other shops. Well, they also kind of go away if you keep doing your thing and being authentic and forging those relationships. And
well, but I think the challenge a lot of guys are facing, Nate, is if you're not growing and things seem tough, and then you see your competitor next door go out of business, I think a lot of guys' gut reaction is, hey, that's not an opportunity, and I should buy more stuff because they used to sell 300 snowboards a year. I'm going to try and sell another 100 next year. I'm making these numbers up, of course.
Right.
Instead, they go, shit, no one's buying snowboards at brick and mortar in my town. I should buy fewer.
It's the wrong mindset because there were all those boards in the space, and
yep.
We see it even on a level as wide as, I would say, 100, maybe even at another time, 150-mile radius based on the shops in that big of a radius as they kind of ebb and flow. How many people were knocking on our door, the years that the other shops were magically gone.
But to be fair, less and less of that happens nowadays because I think that I think a thing that may happen is, let's say it's a mom and pop snowboard shop and, you've been shopping there and then they close and you've had this alliance with them, right? You felt like, man, I know I could buy online, but I'm not gonna because I really care about Bob and June and those guys are great or whoever. And then they close. Well, maybe your gut reaction is, I'm not going to go to that other brick and mortar store because they competed with them. Now that they're gone, I'm free to shop online.
Yeah, I've absolutely seen that before. I've totally seen that. One final thing, what advice would you give the 18-year-old kid who wants to start his own shop right now?
Okay, first thing, don't ever, ever, ever sign what do they call it? A letter
of personal guarantee?
A personal guarantee. Never sign a personal guarantee, whatever you do. Not on your lease, not in your agreement with your retailer or with your manufacturers. Just don't do it. You'll lose everything. I've seen it happen time and time again. If you fail, just don't do it. And you might not be able to open the business as a result, but that's my first thing. Second, if you want to get into retail, buy the space, because that's how you're going to retire. Something that we really wished we could have done, and we couldn't swing it in Seattle. But, you could work 20 years and make a nice little salary, and at the end, if you've leased it, you just close up and you're done. If you bought it, maybe you sell it for $2 million and you're in a good spot. And then I think, if you're specifically talking about snowboard shop, I wouldn't do it at 18. I'd spend a little time working in some shops, probably take some business classes for sure. And I would figure out what your angle is that's different than what your competitors are doing, and then you sell it to your manufacturers. Those guys, they're hungry for new places to sell product. And if you can be creative and come up with a cool program, then I think you'll get a lot of support. But if you're just like, well, I love snowboarding and I want to carry your brand and I'm going to have some and I got this spot, you're not going to get the support you want, and you're probably just going to fail. So, not trying to be a negative Nelly, but you're going to have to come with something different. Again, maybe it's a blended business or a retail or a rental-based business, something that find something that makes people come to you that they cannot get somewhere else.
Awesome advice, Adam. Thank you so much. It's been awesome chatting with you, man.
Yeah, you too, Nate.
Hey, thank you for listening. Thank you for subscribing in iTunes. We jumped up a spot in the iTunes rankings, so please continue to subscribe and leave a review if you're enjoying the podcasts. It really helps our rankings and helps more people find the show. Since we're talking about retail sales today, I wanted to put the call out for established sales reps in the Pacific Northwest, California, the Rockies, Great Lakes, the South, and/or New England. I'm looking to expand retail distribution of the snowboard boot insole company that I started, Shred Soles. If you've listened to some of the other episodes, you may know that I used a direct-to-consumer model for Shred Soles over the internet for the past 5 years. This past season, I had a rep in the Mid-Atlantic area, Anthony DeMarco, with First Chair Trading Company, that hit me up asking if he could rep the brand, and at first I was like, no, that's not my model. But he was really persistent and a super nice guy, and he ended up repping the line this year and doing really well with it. So if you're an established rep that has interest in picking up an additional line, shoot me an email at nate@shredsoles.com. I'd love to talk with you. Speaking of Shred Soles, the discount code TNSP is still valid for 10% off and free shipping through the end of this month at www.shredsoles.com. Also, remember the Amazon banner ad, and you can bookmark it in your browser at thenotsnowboardingpodcast.com/support, or just click through from the show notes before you buy anything on Amazon. Until next time, peace.
Thank you for listening to the Not Snowboarding Podcast. To hear more episodes, go to www.notsnowboardingpodcast.com.